Today, we're diving into a question that, let's be honest, probably affects every single one of us. Is the way we read online actually changing our brains and maybe even our ability to think deeply? Just think about it for a second. When was the last time you read a really long article from start to finish without getting distracted? Do you find yourself just scrolling, hunting for keywords instead of really sinking into the text? If any of that sounds familiar, well, you're not alone. And this isn't just a hunch we all have. It's a real phenomenon that neuroscientists are taking very seriously. Marianne Wolf, who's a leading expert on the reading brain, puts it pretty starkly. She says skim reading isn't just a thing we do anymore. It's actually becoming our new normal, and that has some pretty profound consequences for all of us. So, what does this new normal of skimming really look like? Let's break down how this habit might actually be rewiring the way our brains work. This really puts it all into perspective. On the left, you've got deep reading. That's the active, engaged process where our brains are making connections, analyzing arguments, and even feeling empathy. It's how we tackle complex ideas. But then on the right, you have skimming, which is basically a survival tactic for dealing with information overload. Our eyes just dart across the page in these F or Z patterns. We're word spotting, hunting for keywords. Here, speed totally wins out over comprehension. So yeah, we're processing information, but are we truly understanding it? And here is the absolute crucial point. Our brains are incredibly adaptable. You've heard the saying, use it or lose it, right? Well, that's exactly what's going on. By constantly practicing this fast, shallow kind of reading, we're physically making those neural pathways stronger. Meanwhile, the circuits for the slower, more focused, deep reading, well, they might be getting weaker from lack of use. Now, this isn't just a theory. Researchers are actually putting this to the test. So let's take a look at a really fascinating study out of Sweden that put digital reading and good old-fashioned print head to head. So here was the setup. Researchers in Gothenburg took a group of high school students who were all learning English. They gave everyone the exact same reading comprehension test. The only catch, half of them read it on paper and the other half read it on a screen. And this was a pretty big deal at the time because Sweden was actually moving all of its national tests to a digital format. The results were pretty striking. As you can see here, the boys in the study did significantly better on the paper test compared to the digital one. Interestingly, the girls' scores were pretty much the same on both. The researchers pointed out that boys who were already struggling a bit academically had a particularly tough time with the digital format. It suggests that for some students, the screen itself might be a barrier to really understanding what they're reading. And this tension between digital and analog skills, it doesn't just pop up in high school reading tests. It actually starts way, way earlier with something much more fundamental, the simple physical act of writing by hand. I mean, it makes sense, right? Before we can read complex books, we have to learn how to form letters with our hands, and that whole process is deeply connected to developing our fine motor skills. But as kids spend more and more time just swiping and typing, there's a real concern that these foundational skills are being left behind. And of course, there's research to back this up. One study took students with poor handwriting and split them up. The control group, they saw almost no change, but the other group got targeted training for their fine motor skills, and look at that. They showed a huge leap in how legible their handwriting was. It's pretty clear proof that this physical, analog practice really helps build those cognitive skills. Okay, so this growing pile of evidence, from reading comprehension all the way to handwriting, is now starting to have some major real-world consequences. And that brings us right back to Sweden, where all these findings have led to a pretty dramatic shift in national policy. Get this, between 2016 and 2021, the average reading score for fourth graders in Sweden dropped by 11 points on a major international test. For a country that takes so much pride in its education system, this was a massive red flag. The alarm bells were officially ringing. So, in response, the Swedish government didn't just tweak a few things. They slammed on the brakes and did a complete U-turn. They launched this massive back-to-basics plan, pouring millions into buying physical textbooks, bringing back dedicated quiet reading time in schools, and, this is a big one, they completely stopped mandatory digital learning for any kid under 6. The message from the very top was loud and clear. And this wasn't just a political decision. It was backed by one of the most respected scientific institutions in the world, Sweden's Karolinska Institute. They dropped an absolute bombshell with their statement, saying there is, quote, clear scientific evidence that digital tools impair rather than enhance student learning.
Wow. So, what does this all mean? Should we all just toss our smartphones and go back to a world of paper and ink? Well, not necessarily. The goal isn't to go backward, it's to move forward, but with a much smarter, more intentional strategy.
And this brings us to the key takeaway, a concept from neuroscientist Marianne Wolf. She calls it the biliterate brain. The idea is basically that we need to become cognitively ambidextrous. We have to be able to skillfully skim through tons of digital info when we need to, but also be able to switch gears and slow down for that focused, deep reading that really builds knowledge and, well, wisdom. You see, this isn't some battle between team print and team screen. The real solution is all about balance. It's about being conscious and deliberate in how we read and how we teach reading so that we're developing both sets of skills. It's about becoming the architects of our own minds. So, how do we start? Honestly, it could be as simple as putting aside 20 minutes a day for focused, distraction-free reading of a physical book. Just that simple act can help strengthen those deep reading circuits. And that really leaves us with one final big question. In a world that's just flooded with information, how do we choose to build a brain that isn't just looking for data, but is actually seeking wisdom? That's the challenge for all of us.